This is the door to the room you redecorated.
Just a moment. We should talk about our progress on the investigation. Let's go out to the balcony.
The air outside is brisk. The lieutenant is silent for a moment. He listens to the traffic hum. Then,
Now then, we should talk about the investigation. But I also feel you're a bit hazy on the RCM. Our role here, our rights, our jurisdiction, basically. I have a cigarette every night when I go over my notes. It's something of a ritual.
oh man, he looks so devastatingly cool with that cigarette.
You mean this? This isn't cool. It's an unnecessary trial of will and unhealthy.
Keeping the habit within the parameters he's given himself takes a lot of focus. It would be easier to simply quit. Yet, were he to quit, he would lose the cool factor. This man relishes his cool quite a bit, below it all.
Yes, it's been a long and eventful day. Well, you were so hungover that you couldn't keep it down when we approached the hanged man, so we didn't even inspect the body. But we performed a thorough search of the premises of the crime scene. That's great.
Though you really dropped the ball on inspecting the body, he doesn't want you to feel too discouraged. Probably out of fear that you will just give up and keep drinking.
I look forward to that. As for the interviews, we weren't able to find the union leader, Everard Clare, much less interview him, so that's on the to-do list for tomorrow. We tried to interview the White Pines rep, but she asked us to do something for her first. Fine, so be it. I have a feeling Joyce knows how dangerous the situation really is. We have to get her to talk to us. Above all, though, today was exhausting. What's with all the running? You run a lot. Is that a standard Precinct 41 practice? It's impressive, especially for a man your age. And in those hills. Nice shoes, by the way. I like the green. Goes with the orange. They're quite limited, actually. The power officers of the Revachol Citizens Militia exercise most frequently is imposing fines of up to 1,000 real for offenses, in accordance with an interdepartmental schedule. The RCM's primary role is to ensure safety. We are not really supposed to play any part in the economic structure of Revachol. Yes, although indirectly, as citizens can always request records from their local station. Officers of the RCM have been known to take bribes of less than the prescribed fine amount. It undermines trust in the RCM. We can arrest people, of course, but rather than bringing someone in directly, it's preferable to serve a station cold sleep. It prevents confusion and overcrowding. You can't. Those who don't show up become fugitives, though, and have fewer legal rights when they are eventually caught. It's about power projection. Thus far, they seem to mostly show up.
When power calls you, you come. But power itself is a fragile trick of deception.
As you may have gathered from the fact that we are expected to carry a record of our kills, like the one in your watermarks, we are permitted to use whatever force is necessary, and strongly admonished not to abuse that power. You have to supply compelling evidence for why it was necessary to use lethal force. In these cases, your partner is usually your witness. Not a good position to be in, by the way. Internal Affairs handles these cases thoroughly, by cross-examining you for inconsistencies. It is hard to cover for anyone, which is for the best. We don't convict. We arrest and send them to coalition government courts in Couron and La Delta. The prosecution works off our testimonies and records, which is why it's paramount to keep them. Yes, the international community's mission in Revachol, and the moral intern more broadly. The RCM was formed by the coalition government to restore order in the international zone after the revolution. So we did. Now we attempt to maintain that order. No more, no less. Or perhaps it is better to say we were allowed to form. It's a point of contention whether the citizens of Revachol or the coalition government founded the Elysium. Silence. A great comment to such a conundrum. The Moralist International are the world's largest political organization. You know who they are. They have been running this place after the revolution failed. There are a union of center-left and center-right parties across the Real Belt. Our coalition government is just one of its many projects. They also run the ICP, EPIS, most intergovernmental organizations in the world. What do they believe in? They are Dolorians. They believe they continue the humanist project set forth by Her Innocence Dolores Day 4 centuries ago. Others say they are just technocrats. Interesting question. It's a blue forget-me-not. Their motto is love, compassion, self-discipline. I think you can gauge what they want you to think of them from that.
Something ominous. Something like the dark blue, serious color of the early night sky above.
A historic figure? The author of the modern age? You will have to look elsewhere for opinions. The subject of humanism is too abstract for me. The moral intern are a fact. I try not to have opinions on facts until they change. And it doesn't look like that's about to happen.
It is more than that. There's some kind of affection in him.
Yes, I did, when I was younger. In my 20s, I considered myself a moralist. A blue forget-me-not, a piece of the sky. They're not all that bad. But the years have changed that. I don't know what I believe in now. No, I believe in the RCM. That's enough for me. Do you? We are in what is called the twilight of international law. The laws we claim to enforce come from the MI. Without them, we are simply vigilantes. Sadly, it is what we already are to the people of Martinez, most of them at least, especially the Union. Vigilantes. I expect our job here to prove quite challenging.
The dying lights of the city shimmer below. Slowly, like luminous clouds, they pass on his lenses. The lieutenant looks at his slim cigarette, contemplating the next drag. This soldier is the highlight of the day for me, he thinks. This little stick right here.
They really don't like us here. The Union, the teenagers too. It's different in land, in Jamrock and the GRIH. It's our fault for leaving this place to the dogs, to the Union, to the company, not daring to come here more often. This place has fallen between the cracks, the jurisdictions of our two precincts. We run this city. West of the river is RCM land. It's incredibly hard. Human beings are... But we are in control, and it's worth it. The organization works, our systems work. If they didn't, the city would disintegrate. Me too. But I wouldn't count on any drastic changes in our lifetimes.
He is very tired, but the dark circles under his eyes make him look younger, not older.
Yeah, it's getting very cold now. Let's go.
The bed is cold and not bitter. A mirror hangs on the bathroom wall. In it, your face, adorned with the expression. It belongs in the new, the third decade of the current century. Enough time had passed from the failure of the revolution that, for a fleeting moment, free market economy seemed like the ultimate, uncontested way of life for our species. Things were good. It was smooth sailing. People made gold and champagne-tinted interiors and facades to suit the times, calling this the new style. But more importantly, disco happened. Forget about ostentatious orchestrations. For Revachol, your city, that meant only one thing. Guillaume le Million. Out of the dazzling swirl of disco music, in an open-air boîte de nuit, somewhere in Revachol West, Guillaume's blonde mane appeared on the screen. He sang some bullshit. Then he made the expression. Everyone loved it. Maybe you thought some of the stardust would rub off on you. Maybe it did. Either way, it's all gone now. Only the grimace remains. The click is used to spur on a horse. It also features heavily in Guillaume le Million's regional mega hit, Don't Worry, Your Pretty Little Head. Sometimes you like to add finger pistols to the mix, because, unlike Guillaume le Million, you are a police officer. It's your nifty little way to say, I'm armed and dangerous. There is a vast ocean of time between right now and the expression, looking good on you, or anyone. 2 decades, if the calendar is to be trusted. Humanity has run aground in that time. It's a different world now. The expression is a relic. You have some understanding of the near history of disco, plus the trivia you've picked up along the way. Episodic memory, however, remains in the dark. It may never return. You should prepare yourself for that. Not really. OO must have just stirred your mind. They're more like a disco rock band anyway. It doesn't have to be. You can swoon over Guillaume and his champagne-corked smile whenever you want to. Maybe some of the stardust will return. A mirror hangs on the bathroom wall. In it, your face. A mirror hangs on the bathroom wall. In it, your face, adorned with the expression. The chain cutters slip out of your hands as you attempt to twist the faucet into place. Well, you know one thing for sure. You've probably never been a plumber.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? This reality. Ah, yes, the episode. Sounds like an acute case of encephalopathy, now that I think of it. But then I'm no doctor. Ask away, officer. I'll help however I can.
All right, we're in. I know these all look good, but begin with the first, okay?
We're in Martinez, baby. A casual term of endearment popular among the 50-plus crowd. It's a disco holdover, pay it no heed. Aren't we all? Martinez is a district of Revachol. A very small district tucked away near the industrial harbour, north of the 881 and Jamrock. You would be excused for not knowing about it. Unimportant, they say. Forgotten, even. Shelled to smithereens during the Revolution. It has its charms, just not this time of year. I'm not a good ambassador. I've only been here once before, as a teenager. Not a lot has changed. There are ruins, a terminal, fishing boats, reeds, boys with boxy shoulders. This place used to be a province, a workers' resort before the city swallowed it and the artillery did its work. The reeds are the real star of the show here now. The further down the coast, the wilder it gets. It's not really a sea, it's the Bay of Revachol, and the bay feeds into the ocean. Yes, we are on an island in an ocean, the world's largest body of water, the Insulindic.
Known to the early Revacholians as Les Immensités Bleues, the blue immensities. Vast, lukewarm and unknowable, flowing in and out of sight.
Caillou, as you already know. Imagine a pebble. A smoothed-over pebble amidst a great blue sea, misshapen, cracked. The cracks are the river Esperance. We're in the delta of this river, on the 6th branch, the Martinez distributary.
It is clear this pebble is of enormous value to her.
Revachol? Revachol is what you call a city. The great kind.
As if it's self-explanatory, beyond patriotism, a fact.
History detective. They built this city to resolve history. Our part in it, at least. Our centuries. The nations of the Occident, or migrant workers from Semenine and Ile-Marat, depending on your creed. In the DeLorean century, 380 years ago. They say it's where the terrible questions of our time will be answered. The tensions are highest, the fault lines deepest. By that I mean conflicts. Ideological conflicts. The stuff of men. We are standing on a fertile, self-sufficient island able to sustain up to 200 million people in the middle of the Insulindic Ocean, the world's connective tissue. It's where the money is. I think it's fair to say so. Martinez is about...
A sparkle of lights on the horizon, like evening stars above the curvature of the planet.
"22 kilometers from the center of the world. That soldering iron is the Bank of the World building. The bottom floors are Insiacom. Coalition government, Insulindian Mission Command."
Silence. She lowers her hand. The water, the light. It's as though you're seeing it for the first time. There is no recognition, only the immensity of the sea and the cold radiating from it.
we are where we are. I have no truer answer to give, unfortunately.
This is one thought you need to complete. Where are you?
Was there something else you wanted to know? I remember something about a lowdown. These are unimportant times, Detective. You and I were born after the dust had settled. 1,000th of a second too late. For the big time. The revolution. It's quite easy. Every 100 years or so, our species gets together to decide what's next, who gets shot in the head, and who gets the mineral rights. It's a real kerfuffle. Those would be the communists. Generally speaking, 40 million people got shot in the head during the World Revolution. But the communists, they all got shot in the head.
She's not gloating. It's a relieved celebration.
Oh, and the anarchists too. They shot them well. So well, one forgets they even existed. Did they ever? Before they got shot themselves, they shot 2 million people. Yes, the Red Deluge. The Insulindian Deluge, they call it. Oh, lots of people. Even the king got shot in the head, or thrown beneath a horse, or drowned. Accounts differ. It was unceremonious. Just as well, he wasn't actually the king. Just the king's nephew. The real king abdicated and lived out a long and productive life as a venture capitalist in Grad. About head shooting? The liberals got the mineral rights. And by mineral rights, I mean everything. Liberals are usually middle-class people, Detective. Or the remaining gentry. The beneficiaries of the pre-revolutionary arrangement. Some were rich enough to stay with the Constitution, with monarchy. Big mistake. Others bet on the revolution. They were called the ultras, or ultra-liberals. They fared well. They didn't win so much as survive. We were the last ones standing when the war ended. Everyone else got shot in the head, remember?
We. She's one of them. Of course.
To foreign intervention. The coalition. Those people really took the mineral rights. The Liberals took everything that wasn't nailed to the ground. The Coalition took the ground. The ocean, the laws, and the people. The Coalition of Nations. Grad, Mesk, Vesper, Messina, Oranje, and Sur-la-Clay. The armed center of the world. They landed here and ended the revolution. It was the moralist thing to do.
There is bitterness in her voice, tempered with understanding. She is critical, but ultimately understands the cause.
The moralists believe in keeping everything exactly the way it is. They believe in mineral rights, and not shooting people in the head. At least not in the same manner and volume as the others do. They are the long-standing provisional rulers of Revachol now, the coalition government.
The rulers of Revachol, and also the world. These guys are strong.
This is their zone of control. They embolden the RCM with crumbs of the same law they took. Technically speaking, you are a moralist.
The color of moralism is blue. The official motto of Moral Intern, or Moralist International, is a blue forget-me-not, a piece of grey sky. Unofficial. For a moment, there was hope.
A devout man of the center. Hard to come by. It's good to have someone who takes a moderate approach to head shooting. In your line of work, I mean. The turn of the century revolution? Don't answer it. It's a trick question. The revolution began in '02 on the Isla of Grad, though by the end, nearly the whole world had gotten involved. It wasn't a who, but a what. A pandemic of Zarat, a particularly virulent prion disease, which the authorities in Grad proved unable to contain. Then Mazov came along and overthrew the government. It made people overthrow their governments. Of course not. It was a highly infectious microorganism that destroyed brain tissue. The actual causes of the revolution were material. The pandemic only provided the spark. From Revachol and Grad? Not far. The world managed to cauterize itself. Mazov's government was overthrown in '08, and the coalition crushed the Revachol commune 2 years later. It was the end. Why? You and I, officer. Our lives in the zone of control.
Something tells you her life and yours are not that similar. Maybe it's because she has a boat and you have that necktie? A pair of pants?
No doubt. But we share the same time and position on the planet's crust. That counts for more than you think. A city-state divided into free market zones under the everlasting interregnum of the Coalition of Nations. And you, of course, the citizens' militia.
The clatter of typewriter keys fills the main hall of the reappropriated silk mill. Precinct 41. Chad Tilbrook presses enter. Outside, Officer Elfboy Williams slams the door of an armored motor carriage.
The zone of control is the third incarnation of Revachol, after the failure of the suzerain and the commune. Modernity. They developed the marvels of the inter-eastlery communication. Telematic milieus, radiation, colored plastics. Meanwhile, in Revachol West, the aftermath continues for the 5th decade. 43 years. Hard to fathom, I know. The 20s saw a decade of urban war, west of the river leveled, offshore platforms in flames. Still, it's regarded as an improvement on what came before. 08 to 19 was simply hell. The 30s? Things settled down in the 30s. Revachol East transformed itself into the world's largest tax haven, with the international community's blessing. For the first time in a long time, it seemed like things were going somewhere.
Then you happened. Your youth in the 30s.
Yes, and quantitative easing. It was a market mirage, unfortunately. The 40s dispelled it. An Isla-wide hangover, you might say. So, here we are. Welcome to reality, baby.
From the looks of it, the 50s haven't been much better for the zone of control. You can see it in her eyes. Days slipping away.
I've no right to be dissatisfied. This shirt is Barbara Muscova, this raincoat is impervious to rain and is guaranteed for 100 years. My daughters will wear it. No, it's just... We could have had so much more. Every one of us. If only we'd played it right. Good question. What would you have done differently?
No, her first.
And I asked you, past-less detective of the Citizens Militia, what insight has acute encephalopathy given to you? So a quarter of humanity simply lost their minds. And how would you stop a prion, a complex folding protein, unlife, with the technology 50 years ago? Good hygiene. Really. A very moderate solution to an extreme problem. It's those sort of half measures that doomed the authorities in Grad. When they failed to step up, Marzov and his party stepped in. In this particular case, maybe a more robust state response might have been appropriate. Why, of course. We're talking Duke Out Central. Full swing intraspecies warfare. No, I would say the apes were neutral. On the other hand, they are what they are. Who knows? An afterbloom may yet come. Anyway, enough sentimentality. Is there anything else you want to know?
Not so fast. Who is she in all this? Ask her who she is. She owes you an answer. She won't maneuver her way out of this one.
I am the vilest of the vile. A traitor, a devourer of nations and infants. I am an ultra.
She raises the corner of her mouth, smirking, revealing a canine.
Yes. I am the nether creature of the Forbidden Swamp. I pushed the king under a shit wagon and betrayed the revolution. My kind surrendered the nation to financial colonists. I can see you thought we'd gone extinct. After all, no sane person identifies as an ultra-liberal anymore. Not in broad daylight. You're a centrist at heart. A real moralist, no? Tell me, now that I've uncoiled myself, do you find me frightening?
In her green eyes you see a mixture of truth and self-satire. Decades of guilt and pride. Forgive her. But only because you like pearlescent teeth and those light green eyes.
I do hope so. I hope we're able to remain collegial despite it. Remember, we were partners, whether you like to admit it or not. There's blood on many hands, I assure you. When the dust settled, the Liberals were the only ones left to clean up the mess. By virtue of their survival, they were handed enormous power to shape the future. This was all our last generation managed. With due respect to our overlords, the eternal caretaker government that keeps Martinaise a monument to the efficacy of its artillery, I would not have relinquished sovereignty to the Coalition. Not here in Martinaise, and not in the Stella Maris or Delta Beachheads either. If not for my own sake.
She realizes her small, cold fists are clenched. She loosens them.
Then for my daughters. We had an obligation to defend our sovereignty. We should have burned the whole Isla down rather than let them have it.
Dark orange flames reflect in her green eyes. An oil fire on the ocean.
Yes, I suppose I am. But I wouldn't be a patriot anywhere but here. Yes. Whatever else I am, I'm also a mother. And a wife. Now, shall we return to reality? It's a neurological disorder caused by a lack of vitamin B in the brain. Symptoms include a retrograde amnesia. It's quite serious. You should get yourself checked out.
She conveys it in short, cold bursts, trying not to invest too deeply in the condition of this doomed detective, in case he goes down later, souring the entire portfolio.
Well, it's either bariatric surgery or long-term alcohol use.
She nods slowly.
Yes, and perform autoerotic asphyxiation on yourself with your funny necktie, out in the open somewhere.
A bird? A sphenicid? A flightless bird of the polar regions? Some sort of krill hunter? No, wait. You're an ancient ruin. A symbol of hubris and decay. Half submerged in some salty sea. Of course you're not, my dear. I'm just terrible at guessing games. Ah! This is the pier of Rue de Saint-Ghislaine, 33A, where the tenants have been kind enough to rent me a slot. Or two. A pre-revolutionary tenement, Old buildings are called tenements, you see. And new buildings, bâtiments. After les bâtiments nouveaux. But 33A and 33B are not nouveaux. They're old. This one used to be 8 to 10 stories tall. A real high-rise by the standards of the last century. Built to mirror the skyscrapers across the bay in the Delta. That was before the war, of course. Mostly the urban middle class, I believe. This was once primo real estate, before the cannons lopped 4 or 5 stories off. Splat, splat.
You could be wrong, but from here it appears as if she's running the brush across her throat in a soaring motion.
Wonderful. The girl in the old lady rags. Looks like a sullen and rebellious member of a teen infraculture. Yes, you and I belong to the supraculture. We're common, the herd. The music on the radio, the food in the chain restaurant, those are all too popular for the girl in the old lady rags. She prefers a fantasy world, an infraculture with its own dress code and vernacular. It is an illusion, I'm afraid. There is no refuge from the supraculture. Young people who dye their hair funny colours and wear old people's clothes are stupid, and their little rebellion is self-defeating. All right, what next? Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know.
Kingdom of Conscience. The Kingdom of Conscience will be exactly as it is now. Moralists don't really have beliefs. Sometimes they stumble on one, like on a child's toy left on the carpet. The toy must be put away immediately, and the child reprimanded. Centrism isn't change, not even incremental change. It is control over yourself and the world. Exercise it. Look up at the sky, at the dark shapes of the coalition airships hanging there. Ask yourself, is there something sinister in moralism? And then answer, no. God is in his heaven. Everything is normal on earth.
You're back. Good. What? More lessons in basic reality? My favorite part of the day. Go ahead, ask me anything.
Six kilometers southwest, in the Valley of Dogs. Junior Officer Chad Tilbrook. takes aim at a rabid black dog licking its wounds in the grass. To his left, his partner, Emil Mullins, whispers, "You heard what happened to Tequila Sunset in Martinez?" "Yes, he lost his mind," Tilbrook answers, fingers on the trigger. "Don't worry, Emil." He pulls it out slowly. Slowly now. He'll find it again. We always do.
You're an officer of the RCM. Preciso Mundo. Nothing more nor less than the de facto law enforcement body of post-revolutionary Revachol, Detective. Yes, that means not de jure. The RCM acts in what is poetically called the twilight of international law, both at the behest of the coalition government and to its chagrin. The RCM's responsibilities are defined by the Emergency, Wayfarer and Aliments Acts, 3 pieces of legislation keeping the city in a, let's be honest, laissez-faire stasis to the benefit of foreign capital. Truly moralist of you. The coalition government would applaud you for staying out of politics. And yet, there's nothing basic about your role, Detective. It's true that the RCM keeps everything the way our seemingly permanent provisional rulers like it. Yet, on the other hand, I know these people. I deal with them daily. Let me tell you, dear, they are not fans of you. The post-revolutionary decade was a disaster for the coalition government. Revachol in the 20s was hell, especially on the west side of the river. Gang warfare, a botched privatization scheme, a nuclear pile meltdown. They called it the international zone because no nation wanted to claim responsibility. The RCM restored peace where the coalition failed. A true blue citizens' initiative. They will never forgive you. So, permit me to conclude with this. Who you are to me is the police, the only legitimate law enforcement authority in Revachol. And if those authorities drink so hard they need help recalling the basic terms of reality, well, I'm here to help. Nothing more nor less than the... Yes. That means not de jure. Permit me to conclude with this. And if those authorities drink so hard they need help recalling the basic terms of reality, well, I am here to help.
What is all of this? The scent, the sound, the air.
What world? The only one, I suppose. The world of matter. and its pale antipode.
The camera of her mind glides over the surface of the water.
Great bodies of water, forest-covered surfaces, clusters of light where the cities lie. You've seen the montage. We all have. This world is enough. There is a term of endearment they coined for it in the DeLorean century, when humanity was high on this world, discovering more and more of it, these archipelagos included. Elysium. Not in this case, no. That sounds more like something the Mesk petrofascists might say.
The Confederate Republic of Mesk, the world's largest state by territory, has fallen into an especially nihilistic strain of nationalism lately.
It isn't enough to call us animals. Even animals aren't animals. They're like you and I suppose. Living organisms don't identify with abstractions. Elysium is for particular beings. It does. There are those who would call it hell. A term of hatred that originates, like many such things, with the Mesk petrofascists. Oh, you want a picture of the world? There is no complete set yet, dear. They're having some trouble reaching orbit. Great things are difficult to achieve. For now, we're viewing the world from the inside, sideways. We used to think it was a sphere. But that is beginning to look less and less likely by the day. You wouldn't know it from the tabloids, but the ORG nations have been launching weather balloons into the lower ionosphere since the 30s.
ORG, Occident Revolutiongrad.
There's a steadily increasing trickle of images. Between the big three scientific contributors, they're piecing together a dark grey corona. Yes. Pale covers 72% of the surface. There are grey flares and prominences, even arcs above entire isolas. The images are blurry, but if there was a sphere in there, it certainly looks like it fractured a long time ago.
A cold fear seeps into you.
You seem to be spooked. Please don't be. They say there is a rarefied envelope of matter surrounding the darkened disk of our planet. That is, if we are still living on a planet. Or, to speak more plainly, imagine vast swathes of land disrupted by nothingness. I am sorry, dear. It must sound quite terrifying through the acute encephalopathy. Even scientific positivism isn't entirely convinced about what we're dealing with here. But this is one of the greatest questions of our time. Maybe when they get the complete set together, it will jolt us out of our rut, bring us together, however naive it may sound. I don't know about things of that scale. My expertise lies in nations and trade routes, one or several layers below everything. But yes, we'll be fine. Don't worry.
She does not seem convinced that you'll be fine. If anything, she's realizing how deep your condition runs.
You have misimagined it. I don't have the power to convey to you the effect and geometry of the images that depict our world from below low orbit. It's like the crowning of the world. It's insane. Very disco. You'd love it. See? Everyone finds something worth holding on to in this world, however wasted its opportunities.
Suddenly, you're conscious of yourself standing there, on whatever this all is. Your arms hang down by your sides.
The Pale is not, technically speaking, part of reality. It is the opposite of reality. Okay. The Pale is the most dominant geological feature of the world, Detective. The separative tissue between the islas. It is the inter-islary mass. Isla is a Messinian word for a continent of matter, enveloped on all sides by the Pale. Also, isolation, or landmass. We used to believe there was only one. In the last 4 centuries, we have discovered 7. Mundi, Seol, Samara, Ilmara, Grad, Katla, and this, Insulinde. An oceanic isla. It comprises mostly of water. Muindi is the largest, Katla the coldest, Insulinde the bluest. What can I say? Each is perishing and dear. Achromatic, odorless, featureless. The Pale is the enemy of matter and life. It is not like any other, or anything in the world. It is the transition state of being into nothingness. No, Detective. We're safe. It begins there, 6,000 kilometers to the north, and even more to the south, east, and west. You are in the middle of the Isla.
As your gaze instinctively turns north, a small black pit opens up in your stomach.
An uproar of matter, darling. Rising into the pale. Rolling. Evaporating even. A great vision. The area of transition between the world and the pale is called porch collapse. Imagine a grey coronal mist. Cold vapor marked by spores of an opportunistic microorganism. A mold that's adapted to grow at the edge of the unrest. It's the most disco thing you will ever see. It's difficult to describe, or even measure. Something whose fundamental property is the suspension of properties. Physical, epistemological, linguistic. The further into Pale you travel, the steeper the degree of suspension, right down to the mathematical. Numbers stop working. No one has yet passed the number barrier. It may be impossible. Oh, it is so difficult for us.
A squall of birds, hardware operating in the harbor. Firm, self-evident.
It is possible to force dimensions on the Pale. In modern times, we can even compress its latitude, bouncing radio waves from one end to the other, shortening the path. But it is still hard for humans to navigate the Pale without getting lost, or having our minds damaged. Extensively. Some say the damage stems from extreme sensory deprivation. Others argue that Pale somehow consists of past information that's degrading, that it's rarefied past, not rarefied matter. They call it the blend over of the self. The Pale does not only suspend the laws of physics, but also the laws of psychology, maybe history even. The human mind becomes over-radiated by past. It feels terrible. Absolutely terrible. International standards strictly limit civilian travelers to 6 days of Pale exposure per year.
It's more for her. Way more.
No, nameless detective of the Citizens Militia. I am a member of the Entreprenetic Business Class. I'm cleared and trained for 22 days of Pale transit annually.
Perhaps that explains her strange pining after the revolution. Some degraded early memories. Someone else you've met may have been exposed as well. The strange grey-haired woman in her lorry.
Yes, carried in the hulls of airships. It's a horrific job. Automation will abolish it soon.
You should ask the Pale driver about this. See what she says. That poor woman must have stories to tell, like you wouldn't imagine.
Up to my gills, officer. Entreponetics is the scientific study of the Pale, or a recent iteration of it by way of grad. The study of the Pale reaches back 6,000 years. The Pericarnassians called it the Western Plain. There are signs of pre-modern crossings. Successful navigation of the Pale relies not just on technical know-how, but intensive psychological preparation. Some of these tactics have been known for thousands of years. Nothing. We remain powerless before the Pale. The only real advance in Pale transit is the speed with which an aerostatic craft can pierce it. Less exposure leads to less effects later. Hybrid airships, Detective. Conventional rotors or jet engines no longer add velocity after the point of reference for motion is suspended, once you've crossed from near Pale to far Pale. In essence, we throw them in and they come out the other end, if we throw them precisely. Then they don't.
Gone, like a skipping stone beneath the surface.
The Pale outweighs reality 2 to 1. There is more Pale than there is matter, and the ratio is slipping. What do you think, Detective? Oh no, Detective. It's not. One of the few measurable effects of the Pale is that it is expanding at an unknown rate. An intuitive conclusion of that development is that one day the Pale will cover everything. But this sort of talk is mostly left to extremists. Most people, and indeed most private and government sector organizations, entire civilizations and religions even, find handy ways to ignore or downplay that knowledge. I suggest you do the same. Yes, sweet reality. But before we do, tell me, Detective, is this the first time you're hearing this? Do you really not remember anything? Then tell me, what do you think of the Pale? You really didn't know. This does not spell good for the investigation, Detective. If you don't know even this, then... Your colleague, Lieutenant Kisaragi, is competent. I checked up on him. And you have me. I will try to assist you in any way I can.
Some of that assurance is meant for herself, as much as it's meant for you. She must have a lot on the line here.
Even if we have to do it one basic term at a time. Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know. Anything else?